Hello and welcome again to Hobby Crafts. This is part 2 of creating Kayla, my friend's OC. If you haven't seen that one, it's just the video before this one. This video will be a bit shorter, so as a bonus surprise, I will be narrating Kayla's backstory, written and edited by my friend Kayla as well as her spouse. If you're not really into made-up stories, you may tune me out. This story is also a bit of a horror. I love the story. I really wanted to share it. If you don't want to listen, maybe you can have this as background noise and maybe create with me. You could draw something or make something, and if you'd like, you can even show me what you make on my Instagram. I'd love to see what you guys do. Anyway, shall we get started? Walking up the stairs to the 3rd floor, Kayla reflected on yesterday's activities. Her friend Taffy lived on the ground floor of their apartment complex. Being so close, Taffy had been teaching Kayla how to sew and keeping her up through the night until she successfully created a set of clothes that fit on her doll Izzy, albeit a bit poorly. She had to strategically stick diaper pins around to make sure the doll's clothes wouldn't fall off every couple of seconds. Interrupting her thoughts, the door seemed to be stuck, as per usual. Clumsily shaking the handle while pushing in the door also yielded no results, causing Kayla to now realize that it was locked. Groaning loudly and setting down her backpack on the porch floor behind her, she knelt down and began rummaging through it, attempting to find her keychain. After about a couple of minutes of untangling string, several vain attempts to avoid loose sewing needles, and sifting through the remnants of her many failed clothing designs, she spotted the familiar gloss of her charm. As she pulled at it, she could make out more and more details, each one reinforcing what remained of her confidence. The layers of cake that made up the bulk of the charm, the roses that surrounded it, and the rose atop the brilliant white icing within it held a single perfect strawberry. Finally being able to stand back up seemed to invigorate Kayla as she proudly turned around and attempted to unlock the door. With success, she grabbed the strap of her bag off the ground and strode into her unlit apartment. An odd sight. Her mother would usually leave by 6 p.m., working throughout the night and coming home in the morning to drive Kayla off to school. But when she looked at the clock, it only had said 5 p.m. Perhaps it was broken. No, they'd only gotten it maybe a month prior. It couldn't already be running slow, could it? And surely her mother would have come to say goodbye to her as she left for work. Taffy's apartment was only on the way to the parking lot after all. Putting her backpack on the counter, she made her way to the living room when she heard a faint creak come from her mother's room. The sound disappeared just as quickly as when she first heard it. Kayla turned to open the door slowly. Fearing her mother had another headache, she opted to be quiet, attempting to check if her mother needed anything without letting too much light or noise flood into the room. She didn't need to try for much longer, however. As soon as she recognized that there was a smell and sights of blood on the once stark white walls, she froze. Immobile and unable to scream, her mind raced for an answer, but there were none that she could comprehend. Each one was just a blur, and the only one she could clearly recognize was the sight of her mother, Mary Rose, resting peacefully on her red velvet-stained, silk-white bed sheets. A shadow behind the door had made itself known to her peripheral vision, the crimson drip on the knife it held forcing her fear and adrenaline to kick in. Instinctively she whipped around, unsure of whether to simply flee or attack the intruder. The moment the shadow raised its foot, She knew her choice. Thrusting her key as forcefully as she could towards the knife, she managed to stab it in the arm. It was a man, and he let out this yell as he dropped his weapon. Kayla ran out just across the living room, slamming the door shut behind her when she ran into her room, where her baby brother may still be. The sound of keys being thrown at a wall could be heard as she entered her room. She ran over to her brother's crib, where he lay, somehow, still sleeping. She could hear the man stomping around the apartment. He was on the left side, where she was, throwing open doors, the washroom door, the closet, the cabinets. She knew she didn't have much time. Opening her windows to appear like she'd possibly jumped out, she then gently grabbed up her brother out of his crib and snuck into their closet, closing the folding doors behind them. Hiding behind her shirts, she peered out through the cracks of the door, waiting for and hoping the man wouldn't see them. While he did approach, Kayla took a pair of her fallen shirts and made a small bed, laying her brother on top of them and pulling another shirt off its hanger to cover him. And just as she did this, she heard the door handle rattling, followed by a crash and a slamming sound as the man charged his way in. She laid the shirt over her brother quickly as the man looked out the window and around the room, knife still in hand. There was only one place to hide in this room, but Kayla prayed the man wouldn't realize where it was. Her prayers went unanswered. As a crooked smile crossed his face, he ripped the folding door off its tracks, reaching in and yanking Kayla out of her hiding place, throwing her against the metal railing of Jonah's crib. She yelped as she fell, hitting the rail and stumbling to the side. She backed up closer to the wall as the intruder silently stepped closer. Kayla was then slapped across the face, making her stumble back further. Tears were starting to trail down her face, but she couldn't afford to cry. She attempted to raise her fists and took only a single step forward before getting hit square in the face, sending her flying back towards the open window. She let out a scream as her vision began to tilt quickly upwards, towards a bright blue sky and puffy, smoke-like clouds. Her head slammed on the pavement as she fell from 2 floors high. Her vision blurred as she tried to look around. She could only make out a few random details. The stems of some flowers, shattered ceramic, a pot maybe. There was a car nearby, just on the other side of the sidewalk. Was that her mom's? No. She didn't think it looked anything like it, actually. It was blue. Her mom's car wasn't blue. She wondered what her mom was dreaming about. She wondered if she would wake up soon. Kayla's eyes shot open suddenly. A mistake, she quickly realized. It was far too bright. Wherever she was, something wasn't right. She wasn't seeing right. Reaching towards her face, she realized there were wires and tubes blocking her path. She then began to realize she was in a hospital and watched blearily as Oliver, a family friend, was rushing towards her with Jonah in his arms. Everything was so blurry, it all seemed to melt together. Apparently, Kayla had been asleep for 5 days. she had suffered mild brain damage and broken one of her legs from the fall. She'd also had some debris lodged in her right eye and hand, and would likely suffer permanent damage from her injuries. She would have to stay for over a month to recover here. After around 2 months, she would then leave with Oliver in a wheelchair, who she grew up with. Well, there you have it for the story. I'm sorry it wasn't as long as the video footage, but I can only read and cut so much of it. I hope you guys liked it. It was one of the first stories that my friend Kayla had shared with us. Well, maybe she shared with us a couple other ones, but that was one that I recall from our Discord. So for this time in between, I feel like maybe I could share a story of my own in regards to how my character Weather is involved in the same universe as Kayla's character Kayla. So I'll play that now for you guys, and I hope you enjoy. So, Weather, as far as the group is aware of, is a fallen star. She had taken on human form after hitting Earth and came to the outskirts of one of Arsenic's deepest forests. The crash site was oddly enough barely a mile away from where the Roses, Kayla and Kenna, and their friends reside. They had found her as a small child, knowing little words and having some power within her, enough to stir a strong fight before she was eventually adopted into Kayla's life, after she had chosen to help raise her up into the mad world of Arsenic and all of its magical properties. Arsenic is a place that Kayla had created for her OCs to live in. So it's an OC town or city, I think. Little side note, in an alternate universe, it was Kayla who found Weather in a home of some suburban family in Arsenic, who unfortunately met their demise by Tim, i.e. Maskey. He's a creepypasta. And that was just due to the order of Slenderman, another creepypasta who's linked to the whole Maskey thing. At this point, Kayla had found her at an infant level of development, demonstrating some peculiarities, but nothing quite obvious into what or who she was. That's just about it. I mean, there's not much more to it other than Weather was inspired because of Kayla and my friendship and her getting me into making characters. So I owe her greatly for the inspiration she gave me to go out and start making characters. So I wanted to put out there that I'm very sorry that this was a sad story. The story of Kayla is very deep and meaningful to my friend Kayla. She wrote it all herself with some editing help from her spouse, and was so nice to let me use it as an audio background for this video footage of me making her character's outfit. I very much hope that you guys enjoyed it, at least for the downtime. Again, I'd like to point out my Instagram. If you guys created something while watching or listening, I'd very much love to see it. You can tag me, and I'll take a peek, and maybe we can chat about some artsy things together. Here is the finished product of Kayla. You got to see her in the first video, but I thought I'd throw one more picture of her complete look now that you've seen how the outfit went. Anyways, guys, thank you so much again for being here. TTFN.